So this is the September 15th Harbor Management Commission meeting. We are, because of COVID, we can take no live public input. However, if there are members of the public listening, please send comments to our email address, which is HMC@fairfieldct.org with HMC 8/15/2020 meeting in the subject line. We have a quorum. Mark Foster is here. Ted Schwartzman is here. Jack Hirschler, Sam Cargill, Libby Trischler, Doug Metchik, Jeff Stedman. We're waiting for Betty and the Harbor Master. While we're doing that, you've all seen the minutes from our August meeting. Do we have any corrections or additions to those minutes? If there are no corrections or additions, can I have a motion to accept them as written?
This is Jack. I move to accept them.
A second? Do we have a second to approve the minutes?
Libby will second.
Thank you, Libby. Libby seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Kim, it's Jeff. If I could interrupt, Betty has sent
please.
a text saying that she's been on the line, but she's not able to speak, and she's tried *6 several times, so I don't know if that's a technical matter that you control, but she said that she's not able to speak.
Hi, Kim. This is Sam. I had the exact same problem. For some reason, I dial back in and it works. So I'm going to keep myself unmuted for the bouncer call. But that is a problem people are having.
Okay. Well, let me try something, and maybe this will work. There's one other thing I might be able to do. Just a sec. I don't know if that will help Betty or not. If she's there, that's great, because I'm just sorry she can't participate. So moving along to the chairman's report, on the 19th of August, we received an email transmitting an application submitted by Waldo and Associates to DEEP for a COP in connection with a dock repair on Fairfield Beach Road. The application was dated in late July, and apparently was at Town Hall for all that time, and Betty found it and forwarded it on. In any event, the property is beyond our jurisdiction. So the engineering firm told us that they would keep us apprised of what is happening nonetheless. On the 26th of August, I chatted with Jim Baldwin, who was the town attorney. The question that has come up a couple of times in the mooring committee meetings is if there is someone in town who would like to donate an unused boat for the harbor master's use, how does the commission take title, and what are the procedures that need to be followed in order for us to own the boat? And so, in my conversation with Attorney Baldwin, he outlined the process, which is pretty simple. Basically, if the donation is the value of the boat is under $20,000, it's a two-step process. The Board of Finance, the Board of the First Select Woman, and there's a form to fill out to make the case to those two folks, and then we could take title. So So that is in place in case someone in town decides that they're going to be generous and offer the harbor master a boat for his use. On the 1st of September, actually Ted Schwartzman composed the email, but he did sign my name and his name, I'm happy to say, an email to Anthony Calabrese at the Parks and Rec Department, Brian Carey, the police chief, and Jen Carpenter, thanking them for the new sign that is now down at the lower wharf, right underneath the sign that says, limit 10 people on the wharf itself. I don't know. The picture, I believe, was attached to the minutes, and I believe it's still there, which is a good thing. And then finally, on the 2nd of September, in response to the public meeting, the virtual public meeting related to Aquarion's request to divert water that will impact the Hemlock Reservoir and Mill River, we sent a response with several questions to the folks listed here on the agenda, and we also did receive. Plan sent a letter to those folks as well. So that's the activity for this last month. Are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, Ed, have you been able to join us? Ed Billings? Old business? Why don't we move along to old business, and we'll come back to Ed when he's available. Hello? Were we disconnected? Is anyone there? Ed Billings? Harbor Master report? Jack?
Kim?
Yes?
There we go.
It's Betty, and we're
Betty,
back.
excellent. Excellent.
Okay,
Hi, Doug. Can you hear me? French.
When did we all lose touch?
When you put us all on mute.
You put us all on mute.
I put you all on mute before we even began.
No.
Yeah,
you went in and fixed it. That would put us all on. Everybody was on mute.
And you.
But now we're all back.
Yeah.
Now we're all back. Okay. So I don't want to
here.
bore anybody, but did we? I apologize. I didn't think I touched anything. Did you hear my report?
Yes.
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So we're through that. And has Ed been able to join us? No harbor master.
I haven't
yes?
heard. Right. I have not
Right.
heard Ed.
Okay.
Harry French is here.
Harry, welcome. Glad you could join us.
I've been listening, but somehow I was unmuted or muted.
I'll be very glad when we can meet in person again.
Yes.
This gets unnecessarily complicated very, very quickly. Well, let's move on to the Lower Wharf project, and we can come back when Ed's able to join us.
Hi, Eric Sunman. Hi. I'm
Oh,
sorry
Eric,
I'm late.
good.
Sorry I'm late.
No,
Sorry.
that's all right. Better late than never.
Okay.
Jeff, are you?
Yeah, I muted myself. Ken, there's some work going on outside my office window. I hope you can't hear it, but
I can't hear it. No.
okay. Well, I don't have any positive news to report on the Lower Wharf project. We consulted with the Army Corps of Engineers. Mr. Sternberg did from RACE, and then I say we, Steve and I, and Bill Hurley, the town engineer. And there is as of now, there is no significant dredging project enough to provide cap for our project. There's no Corps of Engineers project or any large project that's been permitted or is anticipated. And there are 4 other projects, I don't know the size of them, that need cap just like our project does. So right now, Bill has not, and the purchasing department has not put out the revised bid notice, because if a contractor bids on it, they'll go through the effort of bidding, and there's no anticipated cap right now. So they were going to wait another month on that. I talked with Mr. Salvatore at the Port Authority, the source of our grant funds. He doesn't. There's no issue with taking the money back, and his recommendation actually was not to put it out to bid if we don't have a source of cap material, because again, a dredging contractor would go through the effort of responding, but with that, and we would know when we send it out that there's not a good chance that it would be done, and then of course that leads to the big issue of the permit expiring, and we'd have to apply for it again next year. But right now, all we're doing is waiting, I guess, another month. But there isn't right now. There's no other dredging project that can serve as the cap of our project or of any other project in Connecticut that needs cap.
Jeff, with that in mind, I'm wondering if the Port Authority might consider a grant to allow us to be able to do land removal of the material. Because if there's 3 other projects in Connecticut, everybody's waiting for capping material. How many years are we going to be waiting here while this continues to fill in?
I can't hear, Jack. There's something in the background. I think you asked if the Port Authority could consider another grant of I'm just back to
this idea of land-based disposal, because if there's 3 other communities that also are looking for capping material, I'm worried that we're going to be getting into shallower and shallower conditions, and years will go by and there may not be capping material.
Yes, and the answer to your question is feedback is the Port Authority isn't going to give another grant for anything right now. They've had the issues I think you're aware of that have affected their operations, and right now they don't have any permission to seek funds for anything. And there's another round of SHIP grants where there was a number of towns that were submitted grants and are hopefully waiting for funds, but because of the internal issues that were the subject of much discussion, right now the Port Authority, everything is on hold that the Port Authority does, except pursuing this big project on the State Pier in New London for the offshore wind industry. So there's no hope of a grant from the Port Authority.
Do you think that they would consider, given the logjam here, alternate sources of material for cap, or even finding other ways to actually purchase cap other than dredging projects, suitable cap?
I would think of all ways to try to do this, and I don't think so. I mean, I don't know who would purchase it, and who would pay for it to be cap material, to take it out to Long Island Sound to place it on top of the materials that require the cap. I mean,
from my understanding, what is the cap material?
It's material. Well, first of all, it's not material. And again, I don't mean to sound like I know everything. I'm just talking from my experience. But it's material that's not suitable for a beneficial use somewhere else, such as beach nourishment, or as we're planning to do with the channel material to enhance oyster habitat. It would be dredged material that meets the criteria for open water disposal, unconfined open water disposal, and can serve to what they call sequester the unsuitable material, such as ours. And typically that the cap has come from large dredging projects, such as the Corps of Engineers might do in Norwalk or New Haven or other places. Or I guess I just don't know what other option there is to do this. I mean, we could spend money to evaluate to do upland disposal. We'd have to dewater the material on the site, and there'd have to be berms around it, and we'd have to, I don't know what we'd do with the runoff, and then we'd have to truck it up Harbor Road or to a landfill site for upland disposal. And I don't believe that I don't know how many landfills in Connecticut are even accepting it, but the cost compared to open water is much greater. Man, I'm sorry to be talking so much.
From my understanding, it has to be dredged material and it can't be beach sand.
Yes. Yes. That's as I understand it.
Could it come from the creek?
Well, then you've got to get the permit to if it's an area that you got to get the permit to dredge the material. And if it's an area, I
understand, but I've also heard that there may be a process starting to seek permitting to dredge the creek.
In Pine Creek, are you talking about?
Yes.
Well, then maybe. Well, if there's another opportunity, we'll try to be alert to it, but we've been relying on the Corps of Engineers, which is the entity responsible for coordinating these projects with CAP. And if there's another project that might be dredged and might serve as the CAP, but the permitting can take, I don't want to say years, but sometimes it can to do that, to dredge an area that hasn't been dredged before.
And our permit expires next spring. Am I right, Jeff?
Yeah, we don't have we can't renew it anymore.
And after that, we can't renew it again. So
we have to apply for it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish Mr. Sternberg was on the line, but I don't think he's going to say anything more than what I've said. It's just the way it is. It's the dredging process is just inherently complicated and costly, and we can all say we wish it would go faster, but that doesn't make it go faster.
I wonder if because of the circumstances surrounding this whole year, that they would be willing to extend that window.
We can ask them that. We can ask DEEP that if they'd extend it for another year, especially since we did do another whatever you want to say. We tested it again last year.
Well, I have to say that I thought the letter that we sent them last spring, begging for an extension, was very persuasive. I mean, there are a number of circumstances that are beyond our control that we cited, a number of things that were within DEEP's control that prevented us from doing it sooner that we cited, and the commissioner was pretty specific and pretty stern. Sorry guys, but you've one more time this year and that's it.
Well, I apologize for talking too much, but Steve or maybe Devin Santa, if they're on the line from RACE, might they be able to chime in since they're handling the permit for us? Can they would know how to unmute themselves and speak?
Can anyone hear me? I'm on the line.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, here I am. I think Jeff answered correctly on the capping. You can't really pay for cap to go offshore. They don't want to use the dump sites or disposal areas to fill up with good material. They're last resort, not first resort. So you need to find a sequential job. And like Jeff said, most of the time they're federal projects that have a lot of material that can cover these other jobs. So it used to be when there's more federal dredging, it was easy to kind of get sequenced and get under one of those jobs. Now, without a federal project on the near horizon, finding the cap material is challenging.
So does that mean if there are 4 more projects that need cap material that the dredging is effectively going to stop?
Well, yeah. There are other alternatives. They're just not they're cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, trucking things up, bringing them to landfills, thickening them with cement, and using them as low-quality fill. All these things are done in various states throughout the region, but what may work for an ExxonMobil terminal down in the Arthur Kill, what they can afford to pay per yard for dredging is probably going to be radically different from what the town of Fairfield can afford. Right. So, cap can actually just stop a season's worth of dredging. And this wouldn't be the first instance of it. I've been involved in lots of projects where everything's set to go, but you have the contractor, but you don't have the cap material.
I think we've had that several times.
Yeah.
Wow, bad news.
And the other thing with the suggestion of the Pine Creek material, I believe a lot of the stuff they're considering dredging at the mouth there is sand, which would need to be beneficially reused, so that wouldn't be allowed to go open water and therefore wouldn't be considered as cap as well.
So in other words, that would have to go onto the beach?
Sand has to be beneficially reused. It can be used for civil projects as well. I know when we did when we did the shoal, I think most of it ended up in beaches, but some of it we just slated, even for the regulatory perspective, that it could have been used by the town for civil projects.
But not capping.
Exactly. It has to have a public benefit, and cap is not considered that.
Oh. Jeff or Devin, when are we looking at having this affecting real navigation use of the harbor for people using that section of the harbor, or is that not really?
You're talking about the shoaling at the docks at Lower Wharf?
Right, and the area around it over time. I mean, I'm trying to get a feel for how much time horizon do we have here to come to grips with this. Is it a decade?
Yeah, it's on that order of magnitude or even more. I mean, one of the things that we are blessed with is that throat area tends to keep itself somewhat clean and somewhat deep. It can be unnerving how narrow it gets from the shoal side, from the east side, but it usually stays really deep there. If you notice, that's not the shallowest part of our channel by any stretch,
right.
And that's just a hydraulic continuity thing where things neck down, the water velocity speeds up, so it can kind of blow itself out there. So I don't think it's an inconvenience to the navigation channel for some time now. It'll be some time before it is. That being said, I think the docks at the yacht yards / Lower Wharf are becoming progressively less usable.
Right. I was thinking about that kind of navigation too. So those people won't be able to access those docks in their current location outside of the channel.
Correct. That's the.
And that's not a 10-year horizon. That's a shorter horizon, I guess, huh?
That's now.
Yeah.
Right.
That whole area is very shallow. Those U-shaped docks. The northern part of the U is sitting on the mud every tide, as it is.
Is there a portion of this project that could be done in the not most efficient way that would allow continued use of those docks on a go-forward basis in the next 5-8 years that might involve some of these techniques that you're talking about, Devin, that are certainly not our preferred approach, but I'm just concerned about the people who rely on those docks for accessing the water.
Things go up like 3 to 5x open water simple relocation versus handling the material as waste. Or
what was the cost that we got for the grant for that project, though? Do you remember, Jeff?
I thought it was 100 and change, 120, 150.
So you think it'd be like $500,000 or more that we'd be looking at to do it alternatively?
The other benefit that we were hoping to achieve with this project, which we're not hoping, that we are hoping, is to complete the repair or the rebuilding of the boat launching ramp, because there's another plank that needs to be placed there, and the last plank. The last plank is not properly placed apparently. Now, this project is it's less than 2,500 cubic yards, isn't that correct, Evan?
It's not much.
It's a small project, so that's another factor that influences the bids that we might get. That it's not really, may not be worth the attention of to get a good bid by a contractor that would only be doing this. We were hoping that there would be other projects in the area that could be pursued. But I forget that the amount of the grant. I thought the amount of the grant that we had is over $200,000, or maybe that's the total cost. I'll find it while we're talking, but maybe that was including the cost share that we included based on what we already had done with the. I'll find it here.
But the delta we're talking about might be $500,000-$600,000.
Yeah.
The delta basically becomes insurmountable when you look at something that goes up somewhere between 3 and 5 times. I don't know whether this could be considered for the open water relocation site you guys are looking at off of Southport. Grain size is not going to be necessarily conducive to that.
We had a total project cost of almost $280,000, but that included $11,500 for completion of the boat ramp, and then we had post-dredging surveys. So the estimate for the dredging cost, which we were funded, was $254,000. Now I don't know how much that's. Well, anyway, I'll find what was actually granted.
And that was the grant from the Port Authority.
Yes.
254.
Yeah, that was the ship grant.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is
really
tough,
sobering.
and things have changed a lot in the dredging world and community, even from when this application was first submitted to what it is now. And the rules do keep changing. The standards keep changing.
It feels like we might get lucky and something will come up, but we should be thinking about preserving the viability of that section of our harbor.
I think so. And if a viable capping job comes up, then you're in good shape as long as you keep that permit active.
Well, I worry though if a job comes up with the capping material and DEEP doesn't renew our permit, then we're going to lose our place in line while we get the permit reapply and get another permit.
And making the case that these are exceptional times is a reasonable thing to do, particularly when the testing has been redone. I don't believe it's been resubmitted.
Okay, good. So what do other communities do? Do they just let harbors and launching areas fill in? And
yeah, it depends. I mean, there's so many variables to any of these dredging projects. It's the type of material you have, it's the contaminant level that the material may have, and it's what you have adjacent to manage it. If you look over at South Benson, we were able to just take that material and pump it on the beach.
Right.
It was done very economically. And we had a lot of factors at play there. We were dealing with sands. Because it was so coarse-grained, it wasn't contaminated. Because it wasn't contaminated, we could have residential direct contact, and because we had a beach right there, we could pump it right on that beach.
Right.
If we go over to the example of the Southport Shoal, again, we had sand. We didn't have quite as easy a way to get rid of it, but we were able to off-road haul it over the Country Club of Fairfield Beach to Sasco, and then screen it and take it into triaxles and bring it to the other beaches. So we had a way of doing that. When you're dealing with these muds, it becomes a lot tougher. Muds that need cap.
Our SHIP request, the grant request, was $266,000, and I'm assuming that's the amount that was provided. That's what we had asked for.
Okay. So where do we go from
the dredging part?
Where do we go from here? Do we simply sit around and wait for another month? Do we? Anybody have any ideas?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Sam Carville. Sorry.
For Devin. I got Ed Billings here. I got a question for Devin. Devin, similar to the South Benson project, is it possible, or do you conceive of it being possible, for any of that sand on that sandbar to be just simply pumped over onto the Country Club of Fairfield Beach?
Yeah, the sand and the sandbar is a much easier problem to solve than the mud at Lower Wharf.
Absolutely.
The sand at the sandbar, there's a problem with pumping it onto the Country Club of Fairfield Beach that became, if you start to grow private property by putting that material out there, then whose is it? It becomes a public project with a private benefit. And that was a concern that we had for the last round, which is why we didn't put it on that beach, but took it all the way over to Sasco. So I think you would end up with something similar.
Okay.
Right.
We take it back to Sasco. But again, that's not the biggest deal once you're committed to hauling it.
But we can't do it with the mud.
You can't do it with the mud. Well, physically, you could do it. You could pump the mud to Sasco, but it's got to get dewatered and handled differently. If the town was willing to let you dewater at Sasco, it could be pumped to Sasco, dewatered at Sasco, then
hauled away.
And hauled away. But I don't know what the appetite in the town of Fairfield for dealing with contaminated fill is going to be, based on recent history.
Yeah.
Was the fill from South Benson dewatered? Or if you can, I mean, very briefly for us lay people, can you explain the dewatering process?
Yeah. South Benson wasn't dewatered because it was sand. And that was just pumped right onto a beach. So you imagine if you just have sand, you go down to a beach, grab a handful of sand, the water runs right out of it.
Sure.
But now picture you got this soupy kind of mud. It takes a lot longer for the water to run out of the mud, and you can't really do much with the mud to get rid of the water. So you can't really fill up triaxles, dump trucks with really wet mud. It needs to drain before
needs to be
handled.
Yeah.
So normally what they'll do is they'll just kind of put some filter fabric down and hay bales around the side and just spread that stuff out in thin layers, let it dry out, and then take it away in triaxles.
Shipping it over to Sasco makes much more sense anyway. If you just did it to CCF, then the next southeaster or moderate tropical storm hurricane, it would wind up right back in the same place anyway.
Exactly, and I don't think they're going to want it on their beach too, because I don't think it's not beach fill material, at least not the upper layers of it.
Right.
Sam, you had a question?
Good conversation, because I think this is what we need to be starting to think about, because we can be hoping that we get a big project that will be a suitable cap, but we've been looking at this project for years now.
Yeah. So Sam Cargill here. I'm sorry, the confusion of our mute or non-mute. Now that I'm unmuted, any contaminants, and considering our recent history for the town, I think is going to be a big issue for Brenda and the towns from that perspective. But and this is just a comment. You know, in my business, and we've worked with public entities, we've hired centers of influence or lobbyists to help us get us on top of the list or move us along. That's just not uncommon. I may be wrong here, but I know from a marine lobbying perspective, or what it looked like, that to me seems like a pretty easy short-term sort of opportunity for us. I may be wrong here, but we don't know who to be lobbying at this point or what we should be doing. Instead of sending impassioned letters, we have people that really are know that our centers of influence can help us. It may be a silly suggestion, but it's stuff that we've done to get big projects done in Los Angeles and New York and elsewhere. That are part of helping the greater good. That is really, we made money on this project, but this is, important to the community. What happens when you can't go into a navigable harbor or waterway? At what point do we say, enough? And so that's just a suggestion. I don't know how we would research that, or has that been done before. And I leave that if Devin is still on.
I'm on. As far as the lobbyists go, I've worked with lobbyists, but usually on more overarching policy type things, not project-specific type things. Through my involvement in Connecticut Marine Trades, we've worked with lobbyists and got our industry's position well documented with respect to the litigation in Long Island Sound, which really directly impacts this project at the end of the day, because it was about the open water reunification sites. So that stuff is going on through varying industry lobbying groups. You're in the situation that you have an option, it's just not a good option.
Right.
And that's a tough place to be, because it's hard to get a lot of sympathy when you have an option that's not a good option.
You're talking about dewatering it and removing it.
Doing something else.
You can. I don't know what we could lobby for, because you're required by law to have cap material, and nobody has the cap material, so we just don't have an essential piece of the project that we don't have. So the alternative is pay up to get this problem solved, but the money's got to come from somewhere. It doesn't sound like the Port Authority is even a place we could tap at this point if we wanted to try. That would be a place to lobby, except they have their own problems right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like there's anybody in front of us in line. It's that there is nothing to stand in line for. None of the essential piece of the project is available. Yeah. Right. Nobody's got the stuff to put on top of our contaminated material.
Yeah. And Jeff, when's the last time you've been in touch with Diane?
Steve sent an email to her yesterday, and then she responded yesterday that as of yesterday there were 5 projects needing cap and no projects anticipated that would provide the cap.
Yeah.
Well, that's indeed bad news, but I think for the moment there's really nothing that we can do except wait for another month and see if something doesn't come along, and perhaps over the winter it would behoove us to put together another committee to consider alternatives and identify costs and possibilities, because I don't think we can let that area just fill in.
Yeah, so then we'll come up with a scaled back project, scale it back as much as possible, and look at an upland type scenario. Pump it to Sasco, pump it into those geotubes like it was done at Exide. And figure out another place to bring it.
Jeff, would it be permissible for us to use the grant money that we have to dispose to partially pay for disposing in an alternative way, or is that not permitted either?
I don't know. We could talk about that with the Port Authority representative, whether we could repurpose some of those funds or use them for.
It accomplishes the same thing, but through a different means. I mean, it seems reasonable that their goal is to help us accomplish the desired output, and so that would do it. So hopefully that would be okay. I think that's a very good idea, Kim, for us to come up with contingency plans and have a good understanding of what they would cost, and then we can, as things progress, we can decide whether or not it's time to seriously consider implementing those alternatives.
Something else, yeah. So Jeff, if you could take a look or investigate, in a minor kind of way, just whether we could use those funds for the same project, but in a different way or different plan for that same project, that might be useful information for us to have going forward.
Yeah. We first applied for this permit in 2001.
Oh my God!
So if I can count back, I sort of can subtract 20 minus 1 is 19 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeff,
we had a number of issues, as you recall. Well, anyway, we'll keep pursuing it.
Is also the Pootutuck for the sand next to the outcrop on Country Club of Fairfield still in a possibility of anything happening?
Well, that Mark, that's the next agenda item, Harry.
I was just going to say, Harry, that's a great lead into the next agenda item, which is thank you very much, which is Jeff and Mark.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's Mark Foster. So, the permit, I'm looking at it now. If I get this the right one, and I think this is dated 2013, but the DEP permit specifically says under the terms of the approval that there'll be Long Island Sound disposal. So I think what it's telling me here is that we would need a different permit if we were going to change the disposal method. Is that?
Oh yeah.
Do I understand that correct? Right. So we're host.
You're talking about the Lower Wharf permit.
Yeah, but this permit, Mark, we've renewed it, and when we renewed it in the spring, the commissioner said no more renewals. So and we can beg again, of course, but at least on the face of it for now, that permit will expire in the spring without begging. So.
And the grant is unrelated to the permit. The grant money is a different issue altogether, and so you're going to find out if the grant money could be used otherwise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Jeff will take a look at the grant and see if we can use it for something else. And can we move along to sand management with using Harry's question as an intro for Jeff and Mark?
Mark, do you want to
go first? Why don't you? What was? Can you repeat the question, please?
Well, it's basically the Pootutuck. I know was talked about a long time ago for removing of that outcropping of sand from the Country Club of Fairfield into the harbor.
The name of the boat. Harry, is the Currituck, close to.
Currituck. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think we mentioned. Mark, is it okay if I talk a little bit, or what?
Please go ahead, and I'll follow.
All right. So yes, Harry, that's our plan. And again, and this project goes back even further than 2001. This goes back to 1985. But so the plan is the what we're pursuing as the goal is for the Corps of Engineers' own dredge. It's called the Currituck, is the name of it, to hydraulically remove sand from that sandbar and to disperse it in a nearshore site that's south of out in open water. And as we talked about, that nearshore site was identified by the Bureau of Aquaculture. It has a muddy bottom, and if we put sand on top of it, they would hope to see if that would enhance oyster habitat. And the Corps of Engineers, and Mark, that's the report that you're looking at recently, they looked at the grain size at the sand of the sandbar and the conditions of the offshore bottom there, and they've determined that that's a reasonable place to put sand. However, they determined that, but that was their determination. So the Corps of Engineers, and we've had several discussions with them about this, they're designing a dredging project, a channel maintenance project, that would restore the 100-foot width of the channel as it goes through what we're calling the sandbar. And then, of course, the design of this has to take into consideration what would be a stable side slope and how would that side slope affect our biggest environmental issue, which is the protected plants that grow on the top of the sandbar. So the Corps is working on that now. They've done a preliminary design. The goal is to, and we talked with DEP people about it as well. And for the newer commissioners, when this was designed back in after the Harbor Management Plan, the DEP at that time, not DEEP, they were adamantly opposed to maintaining the 100-foot width of the channel, and we argued for a long time. We've talked about this. Now the DEP personnel are more receptive to doing this. We've surveyed the boundary of the plants that are of concern on the top of the sandbar. We retained a botanist recommended by DEEP to do this, and of course we found that the plant growth is much more extensive and whatever the word is, it's much thicker than it was just a few years ago. So we've surveyed that. The Corps has done its own survey of the topography of the sandbar and of the depth of the channel, and they've come up with they're starting to come up with, or they have a preliminary design. They think that they can maintain the 100-foot width of the channel, restore that, and still reasonably protect most of the grass. And that leaves the question of, well, what do we do with the grass that is affected? Now, I forget the date, but it was at the end of August. Mark and Ed and myself met with the botanist to take a look at what's happened there since he did the survey. Probably back at the end of 2019, I can't remember. And there is some modest expansion of the grass, but interestingly, the grass, it's got roots that go under the sand, and then little shoots pop up. And again, I'm talking a lot, but we've always talked about that grass as it grows all over the place there. It would grow all over the country club's beach if they didn't maintain the beach. But the botanist said something interesting when we were there, that this may be the only place where it grows in Connecticut because it's not in New Haven or New London County. So the grass is significant. And right now we're waiting for the Corps' plan to be presented. But this is a plan that doesn't involve pumping the sand down to Sasko Beach or to the country club beach or filling in the intertidal area where we'd have to fill in. This is a plan based on taking it to that site offshore. Now, the other thing that's significant about this is what we've learned is that the Currituck may not be able to do not be able to excavate the entire amount of sand that we would want to take away, so that there would have to be some onshore excavation not to put it in trucks to take it down the beach and someplace else, but to actually place it into the dredge hopper of the boat, which would then serve as a scow and take it out to the near shore disposal site. So that would involve some effort on the sandbar itself, similar to what the town did, however many years ago, 6 years ago. So that's all in the works now. But the one thing that's very apparent it's been when we were down at the site is the extent of the height of the sandbar over the jetty. So the jetty doesn't function as it was designed. There's no blocking. It doesn't serve to block any sand. It's overtopped by the sand, and so to the extent to which we can work with the country club or to develop some way to stop or reduce the movement of sand over the jetty. That's something that we've always hoped would be part of our sand management plan. And again, I'll stop talking, Mark. But this is a very complicated project, and you get frustrated. We get frustrated on the lower wharf. This has been going on for 25 years, and it's continuing to be an issue. And we don't know where the money will come from to do this, but we can't seek the money until we have the permit in place. So if there's any effort that might be made for lobbying, which is an interesting term, the lobbying would have to be to somehow get the Port Authority to have permission again from the governor to support the small harbors and to support dredging projects of federal projects that we can't expect the federal government to pay for anymore. That's the biggest issue where we need the legislators to, despite the problems with the Port Authority right now, they don't, that program to provide funds for federal dredging projects that's on hold, as are the small harbor projects. But anyway, I'm sorry, Mark. Why don't you?
Sure. I can't resist saying parenthetically that I wonder whether the state really wants to fund us. It's kind of convenient, isn't it, that the Port Authority can't do anything.
That's because of what took place with the state pier, Mark. That has nothing to do with Southport, or it's the way they were functioning and operating, and it doesn't show any adverse impacts or thoughts towards Southport, the small harbors.
Right. In any case, let me get on. So, Jeff was talking about the Army Corps study, and while that's proceeding, we also need to be thinking about what the long-range sand management plan should look like. And looking back through the commission minutes for many years, the term sand management plan's been used. It came about, it's been used a lot, but we we don't have one, right? So we don't have one in the harbor management plan, but the desire is, and I think the understanding for a long time among both the commission and other stakeholders is that there would be a plan. And what the plan should contain is, of course, goals, including basic parameters, what channel width we expect to achieve and maintain, perhaps specifics such as how sand would be reused ideally, and so forth. Basic dredging goals and parameters. We should be targeting language that, of course, is acceptable to all concerned, and most notably, the agencies. So the intent would be that the state agency, DEP, would buy and approve the revised harbor management plan that contains the sand management plan, thereby giving us in the future a stronger hand, in theory, for gaining approvals for future projects. Now, this plan should also define the problem in terms of what is the magnitude that we're facing. So, just looking back through the records, in 2015, we said that there were the total expense of the project was $228,000, including town costs plus consultant fees. But that doesn't include, of course, in today's numbers, it doesn't include, of course, escalation. And there was no, I think there was no cost. Jeff, this is something you and I talked about, but best as I know right now, that cost did not include any mitigation for vegetation that was lost, because it was only removal of vegetation, no transplanting, no plantings of new vegetation, and no regrading to support vegetation. And what I saw was we had 6,439 cubic yards were removed at that time in 2015. So that means the unit cost was $35.41 per cubic yard unit cost, which is pretty cheap. And of course, we had there's plenty of reasons why it was cheap. But that's kind of really the low end of what I think of for this sort of work. The amount of cubic yards per year of sand that's transferring across the breakwater, and this is primarily wave-driven sand. In the past, the numbers that were on two different occasions come up with, it was around 1,500 cubic yards per year. So if you run the unit cost, that means that the town is looking at a project on an average annual basis of above $53,000 a year just for this one location, let alone sedimentation in other parts of the harbor.
Sure.
So now, of course, the last time we did this project, we sought funding that never materialized. So when getting back to the plan, we want to define the problem. We have to get an update as to what we think that transfer of sand is per year, and we'll be able to compute that when we get the updated or most recent Army Corps of Engineers survey, which I understand they've completed, but I have not received the survey, and I don't believe it's publicly available yet. But then we'll be able to check that number. But of course, it will vary. So this is really for just discussion and planning purposes. So I think for the moment, the reason why I'm mentioning this now is it's a decent discussion number to be thinking about 1,500 cubic yards a year of sand being transported and upwards above $50,000 a year on the cheap end. So right now we're finding, of course, we have more state-listed plants that are probably, we're presuming, in the dredge prism. Depending, we haven't seen the Army Corps' proposed dredge prism yet, and once we see that, we'll start knowing about what we're facing. But what I think we're going to be seeing, from what I've heard during our field visit, was with the botanist, was that we'll probably be having to transplant plants. And so, I don't know where this would be going, but I certainly know that on other dredging projects and coastal projects, the cost of mitigating vegetation and habitat can be significant compared with the total cost of the project. So, my point is there's some significant money, and like we were talking about a few minutes ago, the prospects for obtaining funding from other sources is uncertain at best, and that's kind of half of what I wanted to say. Again, some of the stuff I talked about has already been mentioned in past meetings, but I just wanted to kind of encapsulate what the magnitude of the problem is in terms of cubic yards and money. Next thing I wanted to say is I'll say it two ways. My observation, and by the way, this is what I'm about to say is I don't believe it's been captured in a meeting in any of the meeting minutes, although a lot's been said. The breakwater is, in my words, too damn low. But the minutes should instead say the breakwater top elevation is constructed for a range of tidal conditions under normal circumstances, not under a storm surge condition. And I don't think you need to be a coastal engineer to see it. If you go out there during a spring high tide, which I did, I have a nice photo of the pan that I took of the breakwater. So this is a spring high tide, one of the highest tides you see just for astronomical reasons. There's no wind. I mean, dead calm out there. And the water was ponding across the top of the low point of the breakwater, which could have been low for construction inaccuracy originally, or it could have more likely settled a little bit. But it is fairly good. I think that it's looking at the breakwater, you don't see lots of evidence of differential settlement. I'm thinking that it's a good breakwater for what it is. The Army Corps just constructed it no higher than they needed to for typical conditions. They weren't buying us a breakwater that would protect the harbor during major storms or stop the movement of driven movement of sand across.
They minimalized it.
And so it seems to me that it ties back to what Jeff was starting to talk about, that will certainly in the long term, we should be considering measures to discourage the movement of sand. And what we talked about, Jeff and I talked about a little bit of things that could be, but I won't go into that now. But whatever it is, of course, we'll need engineering and it will need permits as well as funding. And perhaps that could be combined. This measure could be combined with habitat mitigation. So, for example, I worked on a project elsewhere where we changed the grading of the shoreline to make more area at an elevation that's suitable for the plants we wanted to grow. So in this case, here's a site where we have a rare plant growing. We could consider creating more habitat space at the desired elevation, and at the same time be making basically a sand dune that would help stabilize the area. But we haven't laid this out or done anything other than just talk about it out on the beach. So all I just wanted to do is let's start thinking about this. And I'd invite members of the commission or listeners to share any accounts as we go forward as to sample sites where you visited, where you've seen beach restoration or mitigation that would fit the type of thing I'm describing. And the reason, of course, one reason I'm asking is, other than just make sense, is that I found I worked with coastal engineers. My company has a marine division, and when I used to go to the city, I sat in their area. I'm not a coastal engineer. I'm more of a generalist. But one thing I've learned is that you can get doctors who are experts at their subject, but they only can work on a certain amount of projects at a time, and they don't necessarily travel as much as some of us boaters and travelers, right? So sometimes you get some good reconnaissance just from people who've seen something. So I'm just curious as to what other municipalities elsewhere in the region and the world have done that might be similar projects for addressing movement of sand. Because we're surely not the only municipality that has a case like this where sand is being driven in an undesirable way. Jeff, is anything I said inconsistent with what you and I might have talked about, or do you have anything more?
No, that's good, Mark. It's just this is just a very complicated project, and probably tired of hearing me say that, but I think we need to await the Corps of Engineers proposal, which hopefully will be forthcoming within the next month or two. She said the fall. And there will be more sand. That project, the cost that you referred to in 2014 or whenever that was, 2014-15. Now the town had hoped to get some reimbursement from FEMA I forget what percentage of those costs, and then FEMA changed its mind and did not reimburse the town on that. But the volume of material that was excavated then would be substantially less than what we would excavate now if we were to restore the 100-foot width. So It would be a greater volume of material. But everything else we'll keep at it.
Very complicated. Any questions, Mark? Thank you, and Jeff, thank you. Any questions for Mark or Jeff? Mark, Mark or Jeff.
I might also just add, and you're probably to belabor the point, but back in 2004, prior to that, the commission retained a coastal scientist to write a report on the shoal, and we also retained a botanist to come up with a proposal to transplant the vegetation, which was much less substantial then than it is now. And we had our professional reports, and we argued, but the DEP was not willing to budge. And so let's hope that they have a different attitude this time around.
Absolutely.
So Jeff, there's something else that we should say. If I understood you, Jeff, correctly, the Army Corps asked where the property line is, or said that they would want to know where the property line is as part of the study they're doing? Is
yes,
that right?
This is part of the application process. So when we have a project designed, where the material is going to go to, how it's going to be excavated, the volumes and how we're going to mitigate impacts. In effect, the Corps of Engineers will put that into an application. Technically it's not a permit application. The federal government doesn't get a permit; they get another sort of approval. But essentially they fill out the permit application. So on that application, the Army Corps would be the applicant. We'll have to state what the applicant's interest is in the property to be affected. So now we're working above the mean high water line. We're working outside of the navigable channel, which of course is state waters, and so we're going to have to make a statement of who owns the sandbar, and we'll work on that that will have to be a statement made in the application, because we're working on privately. We're working on upland property. We're above the mean high water line. So we'll have to.
And we don't right now exactly know where the property line is, because different information may say different things, and so irrespective of where the property line is, it's probably safe to say that we want to be working with the Country Club of Fairfield. Yes. Especially if we need to be accessing their property to perform the work.
Okay, I'll be down.
Okay.
But we've worked with the club before, and so it's part of the permit process, and I think we're aware of what issues have to be addressed and what we can do. And but Mark, as you said, he's got expertise in this, and I've tried to share as much as I can, although there's hundreds of documents over the years. But we're getting up to speed, and hopefully we'll be successful in this project.
And this as we go forward. Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Any other questions for?
Thank you.
Very,
yes,
very
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Hello? Yes,
Yes?
Eric Sunman. Unfortunately, I've got to exit the meeting. I have an open house for a school that I've got to do at 6 o'clock, unfortunately. But sorry about that. Thank you for all the information. It's been very, very helpful.
Great. Okay, Eric. See you.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving on then, mooring committee, Jack?
This will be quick. The mooring committee has not met since the last time the Harbor Management Commission had a meeting, and we have a meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, the 23rd at 10 o'clock in the morning, a virtual meeting. Anybody who's interested is welcome to participate.
Great. Okay, meeting on the 23rd, 10 o'clock in the morning. Great. Thanks, Jack. Harbor Management Plan update. Jack, why don't you go first?
Well, we're going to have a meeting on this Friday, and we've discussed at the last meeting the means of obtaining public input, and we have a draft. We're calling it a questionnaire, not a survey now. And I think our discussion on Friday will be how to distribute that, how to, first of all, reach agreement that these basic questions are questions that would be helpful to us, and we're essentially asking people for I don't want to say general input, but what do they think about our priorities? Do they see issues, and what would they most like to transmit to us about what the harbor means to them? Keep it simple like that, which is what the town did.
I can only go as fast as my taxi will take me down.
This is what the town did in one of its recent planning efforts.
I can come down and listen.
I'm
fine.
Who is that?
I am fine.
I wonder if that's somebody listening in. But
I believe that's
think
the public.
Yeah. So what we'll do on Friday then, Kim, is discuss how to distribute this and get responses.
Right. Okay. Any questions on the questionnaire before we go to Jack?
Can that be accessed through the town website?
We're trying to figure out how best to do that, Harry. That would be our goal, yes. But how, whether it would just be a sheet that people see and they have to print and fill it in and then mail it, or they can type right into the website. We still have to determine that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jack, do you have anything to add?
The subcommittee of the Plan Update Committee that's working on rules and procedures update met on August 24th, and that led to the draft updated rules and procedures that are dated September 1, 2020 that were distributed to the commissioners, and I believe Betty said that's been posted to the town website for the public to review.
It will be posted.
Will be posted. Thank you. Let me just say, by way of introduction of that, and I think tonight our plan would just be to talk about
excuse me, Jack, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, could you make an announcement to the public to be on mute so we can hear the report?
Is it just you and me?
I don't know who.
Oh, okay, that's right. It was Tuesday.
Who's listening, but please allow the commissioners to report.
Hey, I made it. I made it.
Who is that? Who made it? Why don't you proceed,
try to go ahead,
Jack?
Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I thought I would do tonight is, rather than and spend time in this session tonight, which has been long, and we are planning, I think, to have a dedicated session to just look in detail at the plan update, is just talk about the goals and principles that were applied by the subcommittee that worked on this. And really there were 6 things that we aimed to do as we looked at our 5-year-old version of rules and procedures. The first one was recognizing that a year ago we implemented the online mooring system. There were things throughout the rules and procedures that needed to be modified slightly to reflect the fact that people are applying online for mooring permits and also for applications to be on the waiting list. And so you'll see that throughout the document. We also wanted to assist the harbor master in timely issuance of permits. An example of that, you'll see some of the dates or amounts of time that are allowed have been tightened up a bit, so we don't end up with unassigned moorings as new seasons begin, but we have a good chance of having moorings filled with people from the waiting list in a timely manner. The third thing we aim to do is to clarify existing rules. So where there was clear intent by our predecessors who drafted the rules, but there were some creative interpretations occurring, we made efforts to make it clearer what the original drafters of the rules intended. The fourth thing we aimed to do was to think about respecting the public trust doctrine, this notion that the water should be fairly accessible to all. And you'll see examples of things that we propose to implement that would be providing balance, provide fairness as much as possible. The fifth goal was to provide more clarification around the priority assignment of moorings. And there are 2 ways in our rules where people essentially jump over everybody on the waiting list. One is through assertion of riparian rights, and the other way is by claiming that you're a commercial fisherman. And you'll see work that we've done to help clarify the provisions around both of those situations where people are being allowed to jump over everybody on our waiting list. And then the last area is really cleanup of some outdated provisions that really were in previous versions of the rules that are really no longer applicable. They were typically grandfathering situations, and now nobody is subject to those grandfathered situations, and so we don't really need those rules anymore. Is there any questions about those principles?
Hi, Jack.
Yeah.
Jack at Sam Cargill. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I look at the guiding principles and the goals that you have in the 6, online mooring systems and the new platform we have, timely permits, what the original interpretation was and now a new interpretation, notion of accessibility to all, is priority assignment, and understanding the leapfrogging with the commercial fishermen, which we all know about, and outdated provisions. There's a lot there. And as in fairness, as a newbie, I'd like to absorb all this. And I don't know if the mooring committee is. You said they haven't met in a while, and that this was drafted. Was it you and Ed, or who is on the subcommittee? I'm just curious.
Yeah, this
I
is
don't
not
know
the mooring
about
committee.
the subcommittee.
This is really a part of the plan update committee. So Kim is assigned as advisor Pat Carroll, who was a previous harbor master for many years with lots of history of how things have worked. Sure. So he assisted us on this. And then Kim was on this committee, and Jeff Stedman was on the committee, I was on the committee, and Ed Billings was on the committee. And those were people.
So was there a sunset clause on the subcommittee to present these new rules and regulations? And how does it correlate with the harbor management plan? Did this just refine what the harbor management plan says, or I'm just trying to get a better understanding?
Yeah, I let Jeff and Kim weigh in here as well, but my understanding is the harbor management plan sets out goals generally. In fact, the original harbor management plan, which we are currently updating, that was passed and approved by the RTM in March of 1995, and in the Section F at the end of the document, the original rules and procedures were actually adopted by the RTM rather than the method that's used today, which is that the Harbor Management Commission adopts them. But so the rules and procedures have been part of an appendix of the management plan, which sets out general goals, and then the specific rules were an appendix to that initially. Going forward, the Harbor Management Commission is responsible for updating the rules and procedures on a periodic basis. And they were last done in 2015, before that in 2010, and I think before that perhaps in 2007 or 8 as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so
Sam, when we got the grant from the from Connecticut Port Authority to update the plan, which happened a couple years ago, the discussion at that time was that if we're going to update the plan, obviously, because the rules and procedures are part of the plan, we have to update the plan as well. And so that has been kind of an ongoing effort that really hasn't, until this last 6 or 8 months, hasn't had much traction because of COVID. So
right. Well, just from a governance perspective, and I totally understand the guiding principles and the goals that you guys have, and it makes sense. But if I may, I'd like to be involved in the mooring committee if I can, or attend, or be part of that standing committee, because I'm not sure about other subcommittees, and as new commissioners, I think we should be more involved. I mean, my only contribution at this point to Harbor Management is putting up no swimming and jumping signs that were immediately taken down, and then the town has put up a new one.
We are anxious for new commissioners to participate, and certainly anyone who wishes to come to a mooring committee meeting, a plan update committee meeting, we are anxious for extra hands. This has been a significant effort to get the online mooring system up and running. I mean, Ed and Jack and Harry have spent hours getting that going. So, the updating the rules and procedures, with Pat, that they went through line by line, trying to correlate back to the larger plan to make sure that there were no conflicts between the two. So there's plenty of work, and everyone is welcome. And if anybody has any questions about meeting times, or please contact me or contact Jack, contact Mark Foster and Jeff Stedman if you want to work on the sand management project. I mean, we the more the merrier. The more the merrier.
Yeah, well, my expertise doesn't lie in the sand management or lower wharfs. I've already demonstrated that. And there's a lot going on in 20 years. But, there is a lot of interest on my part for, from the mooring perspective and the plan update. And my stepfather is Harris Russell, and he spent a lot of time on this. And so I respect all the work that's been done, but I hope for more not just public comment, but for comment from the commissioners on the rules and regulations, because if it comes out of, I don't know, Robert's rules, if it comes out of the subcommittee and then it goes to the actual mooring committee itself, or for further comment, which would include the club as well. Provide
I think what we're planning to do, Kim, go in here, I think we were planning to do a dedicated special meeting just to walk through this stuff in detail.
Yeah,
and not as the mooring committee, but as the full commission, because this should be everybody in the commission contributing to this. So it has never been in the mooring committee. This has been part of the plan committee and now going to the full commission. So it wasn't really done in the mooring committee.
It wasn't done in the mooring committee at all. And the reason, and because it's a 17-page document, and you got it on Friday, there's absolutely no way that I think it's appropriate for any of us to have to sit down and kind of study that in that short period of time and come up with any kind of thoughtful response. And we do want public input. We do want Yacht Club input. And so we would like to, moving ahead to under new business, to have a special meeting where all we do is take questions and answer questions and, discuss the new rules and procedures and where how we want to proceed.
Right. I was a little concerned that we were coming to vote on this and moving into public comment. I don't think it's ready for public comment.
No.
All right. Hey,
no.
Like I said, I'm a newbie.
Please, there's a mooring committee meeting on the 23rd of September at 10 a.m., and there is a plan update committee this Friday at 3 o'clock. If you'd like to attend the Friday meeting, please let me know, and I will make sure that you're on the list that gets the agenda.
And if there are members of the public, Betty's indicated that we're posting, I think you said shortly, the updated rules and procedures for mooring on the town website, and we'd love to get any comments that the public may have before the special meeting that Kim just referenced as well, so that we have that input as well as commissioners before we have that conversation.
Absolutely. So since we're talking about the special meeting, and Ted, I apologize, let's just tentatively, I thought that October 6th, which is October 6th at 4:45, it's a Tuesday. It would be 3 weeks hence that we could. That would be a time to have the special meeting.
Got it. Well, I guess Sam Cargill here again. I appreciate. I look forward to trying to make Friday work, and then next week as well. But any notifications, obviously, we'll get from Betty, and that's all I have. Thank you for allowing me to make some comments.
Kim, just in response to Sam's first question about, and I'll be very brief, but as Jack said, the plan provides some basic guidelines that there has to be a single mooring list administered by the harbor master. It changed the procedures that were in place prior to the harbor management plan, and the list has to be open to everyone. So there were some basic guidelines, but the details are to be worked out in these rules and procedures, which are separate from the plan. And one of the benefits of doing that is when you change the rules and procedures, we don't have to go back and change the plan, which requires the review by DEEP and the Corps of Engineers. So DEP originally and the Corps agreed to the harbor management plan with the basic guidelines for managing moorings in a fair and equitable basis, and for allowing the yacht club to have its own mooring area. But then the details are in the rules and procedures, which the commission can do on its own. But it's necessary to have a duly noticed public hearing prior to adoption. It doesn't require going back to the RTM. It just there's a procedure to be followed to get public comments, and then the commission can act on it. And they don't have to go back to DEEP or the Corps for approval. So it gives us the flexibility to do that. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. But
that was very helpful. Thank you. It makes all the sense in the world. That's what I assumed. I just want clarification. So
okay, that's great. I'm glad you asked, Sam. Any other questions on the where are we on the proposed the process for the revised mooring rules and procedures?
So this would be a special meeting on October 6th at 4:45 for the full commission to walk through these rules and address anybody's questions, comments, how we were thinking about it, and to make any necessary changes at that point.
Right. To address the rules themselves as opposed to the process and how we got here.
Right.
October 6th.
That's a Tuesday.
Then. That's a Tuesday. Yep. That's a Tuesday. It's a couple weeks before our October meeting.
Right. No, that sounds good.
Okay. Ted, moving right along to no swimming.
Thank you, Kim, and I'll be brief. Representatives of the Harbor Management Commission were in touch with the Fairfield Police Department, Public Works, and also the Recreation Department during July, basically to see what we could do to limit the number of swimmers or hopefully eliminate the number of kids swimming in Southport Harbor. And back in the July timeframe, the police department was kind enough to offer to provide an increased presence in the Lower Wharf and Southport Harbor area to try to keep the kids from swimming. And it's my belief that worked out pretty well. At first, we were allocated special officers, and at times there were also members of the police force who were down there, as well as the Marine Police patrolling the area. And I think, again, that worked pretty well. We also requested of the Recreation Department and Department of Public Works to get a sign in both the Lower Wharf as well as the old yacht yard area, basically to keep the kids from swimming in the area. And again, Kim did have attached to today's materials a picture of what that sign looks like, but if you didn't see it or didn't get that, it's basically very simple. It says no jumping or diving per Fairfield PD. It's posted right at the entryway to the pier at Lower Wharf, right below the maximum capacity 10 people sign, and that went up around the end of August. We did not get the sign at the old yacht yard, but again, given the increased police presence as well as the sign at Lower Wharf, I think we did get most of the things that we were hoping for, and it's my opinion, as well as some of the feedback that I've gotten from other people in the area, that there have been less swimmers. And Kim, that's really the update on the sign and what we've tried to do about limiting or eliminating the swimmers in Southport Harbor.
Great, Ted. Any questions for Ted? Well, Ted, thanks so much for getting that done. That's terrific. Ed Billings.
You're welcome.
Ed Billings, are you still with us?
I am here.
Can we have a Harbor Masters report?
You want my regular report, or you want the brief one?
Whatever you feel is appropriate.
Well, it had just a little bit of post-Isaias cleanup. That's still ongoing. One boat did sustain some minor damage, and like I said, it's an ongoing thing. Most of my time this past month has been involved with the online mooring system, which the wait list was finalized and printed out, filed at Town Hall. And then, unfortunately, today I found out that I had one omission, but
that's okay.
That was to be expected. So that will be revised and updated. There's a number of issues with online mooring, and it's just, it's kind of the learning process. All emails have gone out to docked vessel owners, but I cannot upload them yet, as there's an issue with online mooring about that, but that's in the works and will be addressed hopefully in the next couple of days.
Okay.
And I also learned today that there's some new information on how to upload mooring inspection details. So I'm hoping that will drastically reduce any time needed by Jeff or Travis at Pequot to upload that information.
Great.
I don't have any information or update on the donor boat for Harbor Master usage as of yet. Two people I contacted, they are using the boats that I thought might be a good match. And what else? I think that's about it. But
okay.
I must say, September 11th is a national day of mourning, but it's also my anniversary as being harbor master for the town of Fairfield and the harbor of Southport, which I am indebted to those of you who helped me do my job, and I hope I continue to do an adequate job in your eyes in the future.
Well, thank you for calling that to our attention. I knew that we were coming up on your anniversary, but I didn't realize it was on the 11th, and it's terrific to have something so positive to celebrate on a day that is for so many of us a mournful day. So thank you for being with us for a little over a year, and we really appreciate your work and your efforts, and we're glad you're with us.
Likewise, and thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
This
So,
is
Commissioners.
Harry.
Yes, go ahead.
I would just like to let everyone know that there's been quite a bit of work being done in the harbor, probably with Travis and his crew, with regard to the moorings. So it's good to see that activity and getting everything straight and keeping everything moving smoothly.
Good. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Harry. Any other comments or questions? Concerns? Okay, so with that, I will remind you that October 6th at 4:45 will be a special meeting. As with all our meetings, there will be an agenda and how to join the meeting phone call for members of the public who might be listening. In anticipation of that meeting, if you would like to send comments, please send them to the Harbor Management Commission email, which is hmc@fairfieldct.org. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
And Mark moved and Jack second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Good meeting, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
right.
thank
A
you,
wonderful
Betty.
evening.
Yep, bye.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
welcome. Good night. I know.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.